everyone. Welcome back. We hope all is well going on in your small group and you're enjoying one another. At this meeting, there are really two words that I want you to focus on. One is misunderstanding, and the other is abundance. So misunderstanding and abundance. In this section of Mark that we take up today, it begins in Jesus' hometown where he's pretty much misunderstood entirely. And we see this continue throughout the rest of the section in a number of different ways. First, in the way the disciples struggle to understand who Jesus is, which should be strange because in chapter 6, you'll remember Jesus sends them out in his own authority. And they do all of the things that he does. They heal people, they cast out demons, they enact his own presence out in the world. But then immediately after they come back to Jesus and they move back into doubt, they become their old selves again. Remember, it's the feeding of the 5,000, and Jesus is preaching at this enormous gathering, and the disciples fail to realize that Jesus can provide everything that they need. And then, of course, 2 chapters later, basically the exact same thing happens again. There's another huge gathering, and there's another lack of food, and yet again, Jesus provides for the 4,000. And part of what this shows, I think, is the way that the disciples don't really understand what it means that Jesus is the Messiah. They don't know what that entails. They don't know what that means that he can do. In other words, they might functionally and in their heads know what the Messiah is. They know that Jesus is the Messiah, but they don't understand what that means for them. And I would imagine that a lot of us feel the exact same way. We know who Jesus is, but we don't really understand what that means for us and for our lives. So now there is this other group that also doesn't understand who Jesus is, and it's the Pharisees. And Colin spoke about this group just a little bit ago, but in this section we see more about their misunderstanding. And so in chapter 7, they come to question Jesus and to challenge his own authority. In other words, they understand that Jesus has power, they understand that he has a following, that he's a threat, but they don't understand that he has real authority. They don't see that Jesus is actually the Messiah. So they see him as a threat to his authority, but they can't see that Jesus' authority is actually something ultimate. It's something that they need to bow down to. And I think there are probably a lot of us who also relate to this group. Those of us who might realize that Jesus has real power, but not actually an ultimate authority. The kind of authority that demands that we listen and obey, and that we order all of our lives around him. And so then, in the middle of all this, we see one of the preeminent ways that Jesus reveals himself as the Messiah. We see what it actually means that Jesus is the Messiah. And the way that we see this in this section is in his providing an absolute abundance. So when he feeds the 5,000 and then the 4,000, part of what this reveals is the way Jesus has a supernatural kind of abundance, a way of providing everything that we need. And this is worth contrasting directly with the Pharisees, who use what Jesus calls the traditions of man to justify themselves and to take care of their own needs. And so as you enter into this session, I want you to have it in your mind the image of the Pharisees questioning Jesus, demanding a sign, and then the image of the masses of unnamed people who've gathered around Jesus to hear him speak and who are ultimately fed by him, even though they've brought nothing. And so I think the question for us tonight or today, whenever it is for you, is how do we understand Jesus as the Messiah, as a God of absolute abundance? And what does that mean for you? How have you misunderstood Jesus? And then what might it mean to see him correctly as a God who can provide everything that you need? I hope that you have a great meeting. Thanks again for tuning in.